As we all saw in the most recent Shane Dawson Jeffree Star video, Shane Dawson is signing a multi-million-dollar makeup deal. But the question that we're gonna be trying to answer today is, how happy will it make Shane Dawson, and what can we learn from it?
He just re-enabled the number of likes and dislikes that were happening on his videos. This video had 466 views with 37 thumbs down and only 19 thumbs up, one of which was his own. And you know, I think I took some screenshots maybe in order to be able to back this up. So out of 55 people who actually felt enough about it to do a thumbs up or thumbs down, when there were 466 views, there was an 11.8% response rate, but that was only 3.9% positive and 7.94% that was not positive. But now he has still 36 downvotes and 65 thumbs up, but 1,153 views. The thing that this tells me, the people who dislike his content are jumping on it the second that he uploads it. And his proponents, or people that would like his content, are either drifting towards it as like it's posted, right? Or it takes his positive following a little bit longer to get on to watching his content. Personally, if that was the stats that somebody presented me about my channel, right, that the people that are watching you first are the haters and the people that don't like the content that you're putting out, and your positive audience actually just kind of like drifts in at their leisure, that's not the valence of passion that you want about your audience. So with that being said, let's go into this final, so far, video number 6. Will Shane Dawson really be happy with the $20 million Jeffree Star deal? This is another, okay, wait, one more thing though. I don't remember it being $20 million. And now I know that this is actually Shane's title, so this is just my own personal, like, what? I gotta go back and rewatch this thing too, because I missed the iconic hair spinning. I missed it. How did I miss it? Okay, anyway, I remember $10 million. I don't remember $20 million. I'm not sure what I missed. Okay, anyway, end of the video.
Check this out. Before we get started, I need you to do me a favor. Down in the comments below, I need you to write down 2 numbers, all right? I want you to gauge happiness from a scale of 1 to 10. 1 being absolutely miserable, 10 being the happiest you could ever be. All right, so if you personally were signing this makeup deal as Shane Dawson on a scale of 1 to 10, how happy would you be? Now, the second number I need you to write down is, if you had to have a limb amputated, how happy would you be on a scale of 1 to 10? Write down those numbers as the intro.
Okay, right off the bat, and this is something that people were mentioning in the comments as well, is that's actually a very odd, like, survey to take. So right off the bat, first of all, when he says, like, rate yourself, like, as Shane Dawson, if you were writing this deal, how happy would you be on a scale of 1 to 10? Me personally would be, like, to the moon, okay? Like, I would be thrilled. But, and this will come up and then a little bit later, asking if Shane himself would be as happy as I would be if I were in Shane's shoes is a different question. So I don't know if I'm supposed to be answering, do I think, like, on a scale of 1 to 10, how happy do I think Shane actually is? Or am I supposed to be answering for myself based on where he's at? And then as far as, like, the limb getting amputated, people don't typically have limbs amputated just on a whim. So going back to something like I was mentioning about the dentist, like, if I had an infected limb that needed to be amputated or I was going to die, I might be thrilled that I'm able to have the limb amputated, as opposed to being the person who's stranded up in the tree at the end of the plane crash. You know what I'm saying? Like, it all depends. But I know, like, okay, in general, oh, I'm a 10 for the $10 million deal, and I'm a 1 for having a limb amputated.
So, are you digging the Shane Dawson series with Jeffree Star? I am. Like, it's really cool. I love seeing all the behind the scenes. I said this on Twitter the other day too. Like, Shane Dawson, like, it's awesome seeing him just like fully dive into this. Like, the dude's passion and motivation, like, it inspires me. I hope it inspires a lot of you as well. So yeah, obviously in this recent episode, you know, they got on the call with Morphe and all the dancing and talking, like, oh, it was great. I was sitting there wondering, I was like, is Morphe gonna watch this?
I missed it. How did I miss it?
Like, what are they gonna think? You know, seeing like the other side of the deal that's being made.
You're assuming that this isn't just how business gets done. You're on a conference call. People do stuff like this all the time. When I worked tech support, like, you would mute the customer so that you could, like, get involved in the flirting that was going on at the cubicles behind you. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is how doing business over the phone tends to go. Morphe's probably doing the same thing. She's putting on mute and be like, can somebody please, for the love of God, just go get me Crunch Wraps already? Like, every time I talk to Jeffree Star, I crave Taco Bell. Someone should be handling this. You knew what time the conference call was going to be. What's going on, Sheila? Okay, like, I don't know why you think this is weird.
But anyways, like we said, like we want to talk about happiness, right? And gauging happiness and how happy will we be? Because something that I thought for many years and something that many of us think is that money will make us happy. And there's no denying it. Money will make us happy. Like, I think it was Daniel Tosh who said in a stand-up one time, like, have you ever seen somebody sad on a jet ski? You know what I mean? Like, money does play into our happiness. But what we want to talk about today is how happy will it make us? Because when it comes to our mental health, like when we look at what we don't have, or when we look at where we want to be or what we wish we had, something that many of us don't realize is that we are terrible judges of what will make us happy. All right? So when talking about, Shane Dawson signing this multi-million-dollar deal, and I had to write down those numbers at the beginning of this, first, let's talk about this dude right here. This guy is Daniel Gilbert. Okay, so what you're seeing right now, this is from a TED Talk that I will link down in the description, as well as a bunch of other sources. But check this out. So Daniel Gilbert, he is a professor of positive psychology. He wrote a best-selling book called Stumbling on Happiness.
You might be wondering why this TED Talk looks like it was from 15 years ago. It's because it is. This is from 2004.
So positive psychology is a realm of psychology where they completely study, like, happiness. What will make us happy? So
positive psychology is the branch of psychology that studies people's motivations to thrive. So it's more about how like that people actually do strive to be their best selves. People want to be productive. They want to contribute to society, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you could look at it as kind of positive psychology is the study that seeks to disprove, like, the stigma. And like I said, this is just a different generalization of positive psychology that seeks to disprove the belief that people who are in poverty just choose to be lazy and degenerate and don't want to learn how to gain success and wealth, right? That it's people in general do want to thrive. How do communities thrive? It started to rain, so we're thriving right now outside. That's what positive psychology is. Happiness just happens to fall into that ball, right? So anyway,
that Daniel Gilbert and his team found out through a ton of different studies is something called impact bias. All right, so what is impact bias? Impact bias is basically we suck at judging how happy things will make us or how miserable things will make us.
Impact bias is that we overestimate the length of time that a certain sensation will last. We overestimate how happy something will make us in the long term, and we overestimate how much pain and suffering we're going to endure for something. It doesn't have anything to do with our ability to judge what we like.
How happy will this money make me, right? If this bad thing happens to me, how miserable will I be? All right, so that question I asked you at the beginning, one of the studies that Daniel Gilbert and his team did was they were trying to check out the happiness of someone who won the lottery compared to somebody who became a paraplegic, all right? So in those studies like this one, they actually do it with multiple people to really get good results. So basically what they found out was when they talked to these people a year later, all right, both of them were just as happy. And you're sitting there like, what? Having somebody who won the lottery be as happy as somebody who was a paraplegic, all right?
I'm going to put a screenshot right here because, like, I found this when I Googled impact bias and stuff like that. And this came up, like, first. And so I thought it was kind of funny. But also then speaking to this, just to bring this up at this point, this is the problem with his original question at the beginning of the video, because what it is that in 10 years, people who win the lottery and people who've had to have a limb amputated will have the same level of happiness. So you may look at it as like the lottery is going to positively change your life and that losing a limb is going to negatively change your life. But in 10 years, it's all actually going to balance out. So one thing on this slide that I thought was like really important was that you focus solely on the event and you tend to forget that other things will occur. You think of like those people who ended up being like incredible painters using their toes or like using their mouths. I've seen them in person, and whatever, like doing this work. And that it's like, if they had never like lost an arm, they never would have discovered how talented they are doing this intuitively, like freakishly talented thing. right, and stuff like that. So it's like that you'll forget, or like you'll notice like other things might happen in your life that changes it. People who end up winning the lottery, oh my, people creep out of the woodwork. Now everybody wants money. You have to suddenly think about things that you never thought about before. You have to figure out what you're going to do with $300 million. You have to get an investment banker. You need financial advising. All of this kind of stuff. You're paying more than half of it to taxes and all of this sort of stuff. So that's impact bias. Isn't that we aren't good judges of what will or won't make us happy. It's that we put too much emphasis on that particular event having too much of an impact on our overall experience.
This is because of something called hedonic adaptation. All right. So what is hedonic adaptation? What this is that we have a baseline. All right. We have a baseline for happiness and all these other feelings and emotions that we have. And what our body does and what our brain does is it gets us back to that baseline. So once something happens to us, whether it's good or bad, our mind adjusts to it. All right. So we get used to that state. So the people who won the lottery, or someone like Shane Dawson who's getting that 20 million, right? A year from now, right? Their mind is going to balance out with that. But like I asked you in the beginning, if you had a limb amputated, or like these people who studied who became paraplegics, their mind balanced them out for that experience. That is why they are equally as happy. Now, does that make you kind of question the things that you're trying to get, the things that you want? Maybe it's a raise or promotion at work, or the new car, or the bigger house, or whatever it is. So why does this even matter? Well, why this matters is something that's often talked about in Buddhist philosophy, but it's also something with some science rooted in it as well, which is the hedonic treadmill. All right, we want more, and based on our human evolution, like this is meant to help us survive. All right, like if we just constantly became complacent and didn't want to achieve more, our species would die off.
Hedonic treadmill is just another way of saying hedonic adaptation. It's the same thing. I don't know really where he's going with this, but the thing that stuck me like as weird was that he said like something that has like a lot of that science is in it. What did he say exactly? Something with some science rooted in it as well. It's backwards, right? That it's something that's also rooted in science. There's a statement that he made in another video around that he's done recently, where he said like that he's really into like psychology and philosophy, and like science has a little bit to do with it too or something. And it's like psychology is a science. And I get that like sometimes people like slip, and when they say something that it's not exactly what they're trying to drive at, but it was just very weird that he in that moment made this overly wordy distinction between psychology and science.
So we look at Shane Dawson, something I've been asking myself is, he's going to sign this multi-million-dollar deal, become this makeup guru, writing this on their merch and everything like that. And we know for a fact, this makeup launch is going to sell out like that.
If we know that this makeup launch is going to sell out like that, at what point is there any room to be talking about Shane Dawson being afraid of failing Jeffree Star, or at what point he's not going to want to put in the work and like all of that other stuff that he was saying in other videos?
So as I look at this and I put myself in his shoes, or you might be putting yourself in his shoes, or I wish I got that much money, right? I think about a year from now. Where's he going to be? All right. And what's he going to want? What's he going to want to achieve? And we want to achieve more. Now, make sure you stay tuned, because I don't think this will mean that Shane Dawson won't be happy. And I'm going to explain that in just a little bit. But because of the hedonic treadmill, we want more. In Buddhist philosophy, they call it the hungry ghost. All right. We constantly want more, but we're never getting full. I'm an addict in recovery. The way I kind of explain it to people is it's like having a glass with a hole in it, right? No matter how much you fill it up, it's never going to get full.
What you're seeking is the dopamine boost that you get from being successful. So you take that risk and you get the reward, and that feels really good because your brain releases all of those neurotransmitters. The same neurotransmitters that it releases, or it's similar to the sensation of doing drugs, right? So what you get addicted to is the bouts of success. And then like, oh, we got to do this again. We can do it again. We can do it again. We can do it again. The money is actually a tangential benefit that comes from the success. So people are getting the actual happiness of this from doing things with their life, which brings you back to positive psychology, right? The money is a nice thing to have and will allow you to maintain getting this success again and again in the future, right? Jeffree Star has the money to buy a warehouse to put all of Shane Dawson's merchandise in for the 1 month, a week or so or whatever before it's sold out and it's being shipped.
Just constantly keep needing more. And now that we know about the hedonic treadmill, we know about impact bias, they've done even more studies. So I am almost done with this amazing book. Oh, it's so good. It's called Moral Tribes by Joshua Green. It's a long book, but I cannot stop reading it. Like I can't wait to finish this video and get back to finishing this book.
So he mentioned that book, and it's something from a few days ago, right? So now we're back to this weirdness of, but like you seem to be talking about like that you're absorbing these books at the rate of a book a day, but then you've been reading this book for like 3 days. So I don't know. I mean, I don't want it to sound like I've completely crawled up his ass. It's just that in the course of doing this, just pointing out rapid fire with an hour and a half of his videos back to back, the amount of inconsistencies that exist just within these 6 videos.
They did even more studies, right? And they ask people, okay, if you started out with $5,000, how happy would you be if you got $15,000, right? And they gauge their happiness. Psh, they're super happy. 5,000, 15,000, that is dope. Well, then they ask another group of people, $40,000, and then you have $50,000. How happy would you be? They'd be pretty happy, right? But not as happy as the people going from 5,000 to 15,000. Now, what does that mean? All right? Because of impact bias, okay? And because of hedonic adaptation, because of the hedonic treadmill, we are not as happy when we already have stuff. So, for example, when I first got clean and sober,
I don't know exactly what study he's referencing here because it's clearly not just something that's in the book Moral Tribes, I wouldn't imagine. But the funny thing about this study, though, is that it's also like the balance and the perceived extra good that you could do with this stuff. So, like, if you only had $5,000, tripling your money is very different than someone with $40,000 increasing the amount of money that they have by 25%. So 300% is better than 125% by more than double. So you can predict from that people are going to feel better going from 5 to 15 than they would from going to 40 to 50, right? And if you think about it in terms of like what money buys in the real world, think about the difference between being able to buy something for $5,000 and being able to buy 3 of those things. Now think about something in the realm of $40,000 to $50,000. So you're kind of talking about the difference in moderately priced cars. I say moderately when I actually mean kind of expensive, but you get the drift, right? A used Kia for $5,000 and a new Kia for $15,000 are two very different things. But a new 4Runner, right? A new SUV versus that same SUV with a few more of the bells and whistles, right? With a custom stereo system isn't that much of an upgrade, right? So even going back to the Kia example, a $5,000 used car versus a $15,000 new car, any maker model, right, is different. But that 40 to 50 range doesn't get you there.
Nothing. So everything was just a blessing, right? Just anything that I got, whether it was a job or I remember I didn't have a car or a driver's license for the first 2 years of my sobriety. Those things meant so much to me, right? But now I've been clean and sober for 7 years, and the things I acquire now, they're not giving me that same boost of happiness.
Same thing right there, right? Being able to be self-sufficient and having a driver's license and a car is very different from being able to just go to the grocery store 7 years later. I don't know. It's just, I get where he's going with these points and stuff, but I feel like there's a lot more to the story, and it's been a lot more developed since this point in time that he seems to be sampling. I'm not sure when Moral Tribes came out, but the book that he mentioned earlier, the Sampling of Happiness or whatever, the Dan Gilbert book, that was published in 2006. It's been 13 years. There's literally a brand new Dan Gilbert talk from 2018 that expounds even more on these topics with even more clarity and even more interesting information. I'll link it in the description if you want to go watch it. Yeah, so the Moral Tribes book was just published in 2013, but even then, it's been 6 years. Like, these things move at a fairly rapid pace, which is something that I'm going to minorly address in the Onision psychopath video. But yeah, it's just that a lot of these sources that he's pulling from are incredibly stale.
So, like I was talking about with Shane Dawson, where's he going to be in a year from now? Or even you, when you look at that, that promotion you want or the raise you want or the job you want, right? How happy will you be a year from now? Because even if you get that raise, like think about how many times we're like, I'm going to leave this job if I don't get this raise and da-da-da-da. Well, what we know, based on all these different factors, is that that raise won't make us nearly as happy as we think it will.
That's a bold oversimplification that just isn't true. Like I said, if you watch the new video from Dan Gilbert from 2018, you'll understand why I say that that's just, that oversimplification is not, it doesn't make sense. When I was working at McDonald's in marketing and I was making $9 an hour, getting promoted, they considered this a promotion, into salaried management and was a second assistant manager in the store, and I was averaging $12.83 an hour, took me from struggling to pay my rent to being able to pay my rent, have a whole bunch of cable, buy almost a brand new car, etc., etc., etc. That raise and promotion changed my life. Now, if I had gone, though, from being the second assistant store manager to being the store manager, and I don't know exactly how much she made, but it was probably only like $15 or $16 an hour, that jump from $13 an hour to just $16 an hour in exchange for the added responsibilities and stuff was not going to be life-changing enough to actually make me happy. At first, yeah, being like, well, now I can have money to save up and maybe take vacations or invest in things. would make me happy, but because I'm not actively engaged in the use of that money, right? If it's just sitting in a bank account somewhere, right? It's just sitting in a bank account somewhere. Eventually that's going to wear off. So this is definitely a bastardization of the idea.
Remember the first episode of the Shane Dawson and Jeffree Star series? I talked about this in another video that I'll link down in the pinned comment. He was talking about how the better his life gets, the more anxious he is about flying. And something that we talked about that we'll recap real quick is something called loss aversion. All right, so loss aversion, what this means is we hurt more when we lose something than we are happy when we gain something.
We convinced ourselves that they were gone, but they were just hibernating.
Always like penny.
All right, so to kind of put this in context, the more stuff we have, the more we're worried about losing it.
No, that's not what loss aversion is. And this is sorry, it's like this gets so frustrating. This is like when you would talk, like hear about like people who work in hospitals getting frustrated watching shows like ER and Grey's Anatomy, right? Like loss aversion is that we feel worse losing an equivalent amount than we would if we gained it, right? It's like, so in other words, loss aversion is that given equivalent situations, one in which you gain something and one in which you lose the equivalent thing, we are much more averse to losing it than we ever were to gaining it. So this, I think, loss aversion explains why. And if you watch the video from Dan Gilbert that I've linked below, one of the things that he says is like that as money increases happiness, there's a threshold where the 95th percentile of the increase is at approximately $75,000. Now remember, I said this is from last year, so this is relatively current data. Anything over $75,000 a year is just more and more icing, right? So then you might ask yourself, but then why do people like Jeff Bezos, who have upwards of $150 billion, why are they just sitting on a stack of cash? Loss aversion. Once you have it, you don't want to lose it. He would care more about losing it now than he ever cared about gaining it as he was gaining it.
Right. So we need to think about that as well. All the things that we want to buy, all the things that we want to get, all the things that we want to own. We have those things. Now we're setting ourselves up because we have a bunch of stuff that we can lose. And I'm not saying don't acquire things. It's just that we need to be self-aware of this fact. All right. So what is the moral of this story? The moral of this story is good things are dope in the short term, but we're fooling ourselves if we think that they're going to equate to long-term happiness. So what is the solution? And this is why I think that Shane Dawson will be happy no matter what. All right. And happiness is obviously subjective and based on the person, but it's because of this. So how do we get out of these hedonic loops, right? It's how we look at our values and which values are important to us. So there's intrinsic and extrinsic values, okay? Intrinsic values are ones within us, right? They're not going anywhere. You're not taking these away from me. Extrinsic values are the things, the stuff, all right? So here's a dope little graphic that I found, and it has a good list of intrinsic values versus extrinsic values. So intrinsic values, these are the things that we need to work on, all right? This is what is going to help us achieve the happiness, all right? So intrinsic values, affiliation, to have satisfying relationships with family and friends, self-acceptance, to feel competent and autonomous, community feeling, to improve the world through activism or socially creative projects, benevolence, preserving and enhancing the welfare of those with whom one is in frequent personal contact, the in-group, universalism, understanding, appreciation, tolerance, and protection for the welfare of all people and for nature. So what I'm saying about Shane Dawson is I think his intrinsic values are legit. He has an amazing relationship with Ryland. They're engaged, they're gonna get married. He has friends. He has Jeffree, he has Morgan, he has Garrett, he has all these people, he has Andrew, everybody, and the pets. He has the pets too, right? So this is why I feel that Shane Dawson will continue to be satisfied no matter how much money he gains or how much money he loses.
Okay, let's take a brief look at this again, okay? So Chris is now equating intrinsic values to Shane's relationships with other people. No. Look at the list of extrinsic values he just showed. Sorry, I'm getting heated about this because how are you actually exhibiting content that contradicts your argument? Extrinsic values: conformity, to fit in with other people; image, to look attractive to other people in terms of body and clothing; Financial success, to be wealthy and materially successful relative to others. Achievement, personal success through demonstrating competence according to social standards. Power, social status and prestige, control or dominance over other people and resources. The power over the pets, the being attractive to Ryland, the conformity with the people who are his friends are extrinsic values. Okay, so usually intrinsic and extrinsic values are defined as intrinsic values are those things that have value in and of themselves, and extrinsic values are the things that have value solely because of their relationship to something else. So I stand by, though, that like your friendships and your relationships with people and those sorts of things are extrinsic value. Like having friendships is an intrinsic value, but your friendships with the people that you actually have friendships with are extrinsically valuable.
But what I want you to leave this video with is start checking in with yourself. So running through your past too. Like this is something that I had to do. Like how happy did the things make me, right? Like when I was in my active addiction, I was making more money than I've ever made in my life, but I was miserable and I couldn't understand why. I was so confused. I'm like, why am I not happy? I have all the things, but they were extrinsic things. Now, today, I have a lot less, but I'm happier than I've ever been. All right? And it's because I've been focusing on those intrinsic values. So I want you to leave this video asking yourself, how do you start focusing on the intrinsic values to kind of boost that long-term happiness rather than those just little short dopamine hits that we get from the stuff and the things.
Well, hopefully today my iPad arrives and I can get that dopamine hit from the extrinsic value of having tools that allow me to do the things that I find enjoyable. But that brings us all to a close. That was the end of the 6th installment so far in his responses and commentary on the Shane Dawson Beautiful World of Jeffree Star series. And hopefully we get a new episode from that soon as well. And as for now, I just kind of wanted to give a little taste of the sort of things that I'm going to be doing on Lockout Tagout. And hopefully you've enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you again in the future. Keep drinking that milk, y'all.